Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Three Strangers podcast. I am your host, Ryan.
I'm Nick.
I'm Savannah.
And we have officially replaced Bill on the podcast.
Yay!
Not the yay.
I don't know if this is going to end up popping up on the screen, but we have a little logo of Bill that is with us in spirit. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight for Triangle. Took a lot of time to be able to plan this so that we can be able to record this episode. So we have stuff coming out weekly. But we are here. We have an amazing guest in Savannah, and we are ready to go. So, we're here to talk about a shape. And
A Shape of
specifically...
Water? The Shape of Water?
Also, two water movies. We're here to talk about the movie Triangle.
You have
Which-
that on DVD?
I do have it on DVD, on Blu-ray. I love this movie. As soon as I watched it, I bought it.
That's good. That's good. I'm happy movies make you feel things.
I will say, Nick, I was on Letterboxd before, and I did see your rating for this movie. So
we gotta talk about this movie a little bit. I already know what my one sentence Letterboxd review will be because I was gonna reply to your review.
Mm.
And then I was like, you know what? No, I gotta save this for the podcast. I'm not gonna publish it just yet. So I'll tell Savannah about it. I'm gonna jump right into this and say Ryan and I will probably disagree heavily about this movie.
I'm definitely gonna agree with Ryan on this.
Oh no!
yeah, this is why I need to bring in Savannah.
We're gonna 2v1, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Reinforcements. Okay.
I brought in some reinforcements for this episode. But you know what? Let's start, Nick. So tell us about your non-spoiler thoughts about it.
My non-spoiler thoughts about this movie. Okay. So something y'all should know about me right off the bat. In case you didn't know this about me. Savannah, you definitely didn't know this about me. Ryan, I don't know if I ever talked about it. I grew up sailing on a boat, on a sailboat. My whole
The
family.
Triangle?
No. Although, fun fact, I had a coworker when I was in. I used to live in Raleigh. I had a coworker who I was working with for a year, and pretty closely. And her last day, we just get to talking, and turns out she had also grew up sailing as a kid and has sailed through the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, what? It took one. Anyway, but yeah, she did have a story of her sailing, trying to get through it, and then they had to turn back, and then she said they were sailing through Bermuda Triangle, and it was a really bad storm. And she thought she was gonna die. Shout out to you, Mindy. You a real one. Anyway, that has not much to do with the movie. Except for
I thought you were gonna pivot this into the sailing in this movie is the most unrealistic thing
I thought so too.
Well, I mean, yeah. Okay. Let's use that. How can I put this in an original way? The sailing was the most. It was bad. There's a lot of things that went wrong in that first sailing scene. For it to not matter too much, there's a lot that I need to talk about that went wrong. However, talking about the movie itself, okay, the movie is fun. I'd say the movie is a fun movie that to wrap your head around. But sometimes I felt like the movie was bashing my head into a wall with the lesson it was trying to teach me. And that was it. That's it. That's my quick review.
Interesting take on that. That's not what I expected you to say.
Yeah. What about you, Savannah? What did you think about Triangle 2009?
I think that I don't. I feel like just looking at it and like watching the trailer, you're gonna think that it's gonna be really bad. Because I did before I watched it. But I have to say, I feel like it's one of the only movies I've seen that even if it wasn't like amazing the whole time, the last like 30 minutes to me made it like all worth sitting through an hour of it.
Hmm.
Like just how it ended was worth, and I can't say that for a lot of movies because I feel like normally if the ending's really good, you're like, oh, but I sat through so long of it and it wasn't the best. But this one, I don't know, for me, the last 30 minutes made the movie and it was perfect after that.
Yeah, like there's definite flaws with the movie. There, but I agree with you that I really like the ending, and I think it does so well with hiding its twist enough so that you don't expect what really is going to happen. I mean, of course, the second twist, there's no way you're gonna
Yeah.
guess. When we talk about it, we'll talk about it. But I mean, the first twist, none of my kids realized what was happening, and then like it happened, and they're like, "What?" And then it became trying to figure out everything where it would go. And I'm trying to do this without spoiling what this twist is, because unfortunately the trailer spoils this twist. And I feel like it really does a disservice to this movie, because if you go in blind, what happens about 40 to 45 minutes in, you could kind of see where it's going to start coming in, but you don't fully realize how much it scopes the entire rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I felt like with this movie that the audience is smarter than the people in the movie.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I would say that the writing is kind of weak in terms of like dialogue between characters.
Thank you. Yes, it absolutely is. In fact, there's one line that I just kept scratching and like nail scratching on chalkboard for me.
Heather?
Well, yes, all of that. But also, oh shoot, what it was, it was something like, you killed her. I know you did, you were with her. And then,
Is it the scene where they're in the the theater, and like she just walks in?
Yeah, and it's such a poorly written, and one person's being accused of murder, and then the other one is saying no, but it's not just a, you killed her, no I didn't. It's something like, yes, you killed her. It's so awkward. It's like,
yeah, and Downey's on the floor like,
yeah, exactly. the whole like dialogue in that whole scene is so poorly written. It just feels like this is so weird.
And it's so interesting because the dialogue is pretty poorly written, but like everything else in terms of like the scope of the movie, like how we're gonna get from the beginning all the way to the end, and also the little Easter eggs of like Greek mythology that they throw in that kind of also tie into the entire story, is so well written that it's weird, because also it's not bad actors. Melissa George is an excellent actor.
Yeah, they're not bad. They're not bad. I mean, Liam Hemsworth. It was Liam Hemsworth's second film.
Yeah, the same year it came out of his first film, but yeah. It's not a bad cast at all. Like they do very well. It's just I think this movie has poor dialogue at times.
Writing. It's poor writing. Yeah, it definitely it makes you think, and this is some cliche, but it makes you think about like, yeah, well, sometimes writers just take the writing. I mean, sorry, sometimes actors take their writing that they're given. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes even the most amazing acting can't beat a poorly written scene. Does that make sense? Without improving. That's a whole directorial thing, but yeah. It has its flaws. I like the I thought that the Greek message in it was more than just an Easter egg. I think that's where my gripe is here. I think they meant for it to be an Easter egg, and to me it just sounded like it. To me, they kind of bludgeoned it in the beginning, where I kind of knew what the theme was going to be before things kept going. Because as soon as they talk about Sisyphus, because it's tension building, tension building, tension building. Don't you guys know about Sisyphus? He did this and then this. He made a deal with the devil, and now he has to relive the whole thing over and over again. Anyway, let's go.
Yeah, I will say, for a class of for my kids that don't know that story at all, that helped them kind of figure out as the movie was going on what was happening.
Yeah, that makes a good point. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know the tale of Sisyphus and don't know anything about it, it is good because it tells you oh, okay, that's probably going to be relevant, and it is. In fact, it's the spine of the whole movie.
Yeah, and it also makes sense with the ship also being called the Aeolus.
Aeolus, yeah.
So
it does make sense. It is wrapped together well.
Yeah. I think let's start talking about it with spoilers and everything. So this is your warning now. It's free in a lot of places. It's on Peacock. That's where I watched it.
Oh, it's on Peacock?
It is on Peacock.
Oh, man, I had to do the whole free trial thing because for some reason it wasn't showing up on Shudder, but when I looked it up on Prime,
it was on Shudder for a long time. It got taken off recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm also pretty sure it was on Tubi, but that was last month. I don't know if it's still on in the month of May when we're recording this on May the 4th. Happy May the 4th be with you. Didn't say that before, but all right, let's start talking about some spoilers with this movie. So I guess I'll start kind of talking about the director, Christopher Smith. Funny enough, a lot of the names of his movies are the names of really popular also movies or TV shows. So he has a movie called Creep. We all know the famous movie Creep. Not him, different Creep movie. He also has a movie called Severance.
Wow.
That's odd. So some little weird trivia with them. But when he was making this movie, he was inspired by Dead of Night from 1945.
Okay.
Memento.
Memento, that makes sense. I can see Memento. Yeah.
And Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, I haven't seen it. That's been on my list for so long to watch.
Great movie. I definitely recommend it.
But that's a psychological thriller, and I know some of the premise of that, so I can also see that.
Yeah. So basically, the thing that the trailer spoils to this movie is that we're in a time loop. The movie's a time loop. Multiple time loops on top of each other.
Oh, yeah.
So that twist happens about 40 to 45 minutes into the movie of its only hour and 40-minute runtime. So for the trailer to spoil it almost instantly, you take away basically any interesting part of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
oh man, the voice is back, Savannah.
No! God damn it! Hang on.
Just so everyone knows, we are not recording with someone who is very, very young. This is Savannah from our companion podcast. Please welcome her back.
Yeah.
Her voice sounding very different right now.
Is it better?
No.
Oh my god.
Oh my
This
god.
has never happened before.
Yes, for those listening, there's a chance that could be the voice for the rest of the episode. So please be ready.
We can cut some of this.
Yeah.
While we're in this middle of the cutting range, were you able to cut the last part not the last part, the last episode, Ryan, a little bit?
For what? For what moment?
We got like sidetracked for like 25 minutes before we. Like,
Oh no,
ended the...
I kept it. I kept it. It was very funny, and the funny thing is, I'm probably gonna end up keeping this too.
Oh man! All right.
Yeah. So just so you know, Savannah, we can't hear you. We just hear like a sound. So don't know what that's all about, but we'll keep on going. Don't worry. So basically, the movie, as we said, is this big time loop. And we'll get kind of more into the plot, like following it from the beginning all the way to the end. But
Is it working now?
it's working now.
Okay.
You're good.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. It's very funny. And the
This has
funny
never
thing is, that's
happened.
going to end up probably being a clip. Like, for...
My
thing.
headphones have never done this before.
Yeah, that's odd.
Who we calling out? Who's the headphones by?
Turtle Beach.
Oh,
Turtle Beach, man.
Wow.
Get your act together.
Send
What's
me
going on?
new free headphones.
Wow.
Come on, Turtle
was good.
Beach.
Turtle Beach was, as a kid, that was such a big name for gaming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're not cheap.
Speaking of the beach, this tastes like their
transition.
water. But all right, let's start going through this movie from the beginning to the end. So we have our main character. Her name is Jess, and she is preparing to take Tommy, her son, who is autistic, on a boat trip with her friend Greg. She hears a doorbell, but there's no one there. And then Jess ends up driving to the harbor without Tommy and explains to Victor that he's at school. So we're already getting a little bit of some weird vibes going on from her as instantly when we meet her. And Victor, who just meets her, also says like something's up. She's a little weird, but they kind of push it to the side. And we also meet some friends of Greg's, Sally and Downey. And we also meet a friend of Sally's named Heather, who she is trying to set up with Greg.
Don't worry about Heather, because she's gonna die, and they're not gonna acknowledge really any explanation to that, so...
Or is she dead?
What?
So there's multiple theories about this movie, which I guess we could kind of jump into right now. There's a theory that all that we are seeing in this movie...
She's not dead, and that's why the time keeps restarting?
that they are in purgatory.
That they're all in purgatory?
Yes, and they
Not
were...
just her.
Yes. And that Heather was good, so she was swept away going
She
to
died.
heaven. Which is why we don't see her. That is a theory that I've seen. I don't know how much on board I am with that theory. I mean, I guess you could call it a personal hell for Jess and all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I would have to read more into it and like watch it really with that in mind to see if I really think that. But anyways, they are sailing at sea. So we're going to stop here. All right, Nick, we need the realism of this sailing and what is fake.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, the stuff that goes wrong, I mean, they showed, them sailing just fine, and sometimes the wind can just die like that. They call it glass on the water, with how quickly the wind dies when, before they get hit by a storm. But here's the thing. When you see a storm is about to come, and you think it's going to be bad, if you are, I don't know, capable enough of having a sailboat and sailing your friends on it, you should know that there's just a couple of things. First of all, as soon as you see a storm, take your spinnaker down, which is that sail that you see in like the front of the in front of the boat. That's kind of like that like droops downward when the wind dies. That's the spinnaker. You take that down because, one, that can cause you a lot of trouble if that gets twisted up. Which is whatever. They eventually cut the sail, which is maybe a little too late. They should have just taken the spinnaker down. Second,
Write this down. This is gonna be on the test.
Second, if you see a storm is coming and you're worried that the boat is going to flip, you find a line and you strap yourself into the boat. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I'll tell you why. One, you don't want to get tossed from the boat. You get tossed from the boat, you're dead.
Damn.
If you stay on the boat, you're not dead.
R.I.P. Heather.
Yeah, you're not like Heather. She's just gone. And then here's the gang goes through the storm, and Heather disappears. They survive remarkably, and the next shot that you see them, I know I'm skipping ahead here, Ryan, but this is relevant.
Yeah.
The next shot you see them is they're sitting on the bottom of the boat because it's flipped upside down. They're sitting on the hull. And there's a couple things here. There's a couple acting things and a couple sailing things. One, for some reason, none of them appear to be wet. They're in the middle of the ocean, and none of them are wet. Their costumes aren't wet. Their hair isn't wet. Nothing looks too out of place. I don't know why. Just a little thing. But second, there's something like vital here. Sailboats don't flip over like that. Like, yes, they can be flipped over by a wave. That happens. That's fine. But there's something called a keel, which is at the very, very bottom of the boat. You know, most people will like draw like a banana shaped, right? If they're drawing a boat on a paper. But a keel is actually, it juts down from the center of the bottom of the boat, and it just kind of like anchors the boat into the water. So that if a boat does flip, it's not going to flip all the way upside down, because that keel is the same weight as the rest of the boat on top of it. So essentially, if a boat flips, it's only going to be like laying on its side.
Interesting.
Also, why did they take their life jackets off when they were sitting on the bottom of the boat? You're in the middle of the ocean. Keep your damn life jacket on. Okay, that's it. Those are all.
I want you to know, whenever we watch like a movie now, like that takes place near water or anything, like we are calling on. I was gonna say boat enthusiast, Nick, but
Yeah, you can just say sailor. I know how to say
Sailor Nick.
Mm-hmm. It's Captain Nick to you, Ryan.
Captain Nick, sailor. I barely know her. So anyway, right before the boat ends up being capsized, there's a distress call that can be heard from the radio that Greg tries to talk to, but there's no response to it. But it is of a woman that is pleading for help, and she says that someone is killing everyone. And that's all we get from that. So, as you kind of mentioned, they're all chilling on top of the boat, and we see an ocean liner passing by. We see someone standing aboard it, just a silhouette. We don't see who it is, and they end up boarding it. It's called the Aeolus, and Jess, our main character, is having deja vu as they're exploring the ship, and talking about the week writing and stuff where Jess is like, this looks really familiar. And I think it's like Greg is like, well, boats they all kind of look alike. I'm like, what?
Yeah, like what?
Thanks for that, Greg. You know?
This boat that's from the 20s. Yeah, they all look alike.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about another thing that Greg says a little bit later, which is also really funny. But they end up seeing a display case for Aeolus, and they end up starting to talk about what Nick talked about before, the story of Sisyphus. And it's basically this Greek mythology figure about Sisyphus who has to push a boulder up a hill, but can never reach the top of the hill. It basically boulder will go back down, but we'll keep trying. It will just never be able to reach the top of the hill. So we're like, all right, that's neat. That's cool.
That certainly will come into play for the whole movie, and then also be talked about again.
Yeah, and then we hear keys falling, to which they run to, and Jess says, "Those are my keys." To which our smartest character, Sally, goes, "Maybe it's Heather." What?
Naturally. Who else?
And
could
I
it be?
love their reactions too, because they're also like, "What the hell did you just say?"
Yeah.
This is all Sally's character is going to be. Just, I hear a sound, it is instantly Heather.
And just like terrible one-liners or insults, and like out-of-pocket insulting statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her. That's like her entire dialogue.
She is I'll give her, she is kind of funny. But it's because of, like, anything. It's just, Heather?
Yeah.
And Downey being like, no. She got swept away. We watched her get swept away. Why is she just dropping keys and running away? Like...
She's like, here, it's me. Can't you tell I'm throwing keys that don't belong to me? Yeah, that's Heather. Oh, Heather.
Yeah. So anyways, they go to the dining room where Jess ends up seeing someone and Victor chases after them. Then her and Greg kind of walk around a little bit more and find the words "Go to the theater" written in blood on a mirror in one of the rooms. To which Greg says, "Ah, I know what this is. It's the crew playing a prank on us."
Yeah, you got it. That's them. That's
Yeah,
them.
Greg, you solved it. You did it.
This crew of this huge ass boat. Yeah, you don't see any. They're all hiding.
Yeah, they're all hiding from specifically you five, and they were like, you know what would be really funny?
Can you imagine cruise ships did that with like with people in international waters who like come onto the boat sometimes?
Yeah,
Imagine that was the protocol.
yeah, that's basically what Greg is suggesting. In this massive ocean liner
Yeah.
that would be filled with people.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jess and Greg kind of get into a fight about that. Where Jess is like, okay, bro, like, you're stupid. I'm gonna go find everyone to let them know we're gonna go to the theater. And she enters the dining room, but the food that was in there from before is rotting, where it was originally fresh. And Victor comes in, covered in blood, where he has a hole in the back of his head, and tries to strangle Jess, but he ends up dying before he can kill her. So now we're starting to get some weird things that are going on. We're like, what is happening? Is the crew playing a prank? Like, this is a crazy prank at this point. They got Victor involved.
Yeah.
So Jess ends up hearing gunfire and goes to the ship's theater where Greg is dead, and Sally and Downey say that Greg told them that Jess shot him.
Yeah.
During this, Downey gets shot. Sally gets shot. And Jess has the bright idea of, I'm going to drag her body, like, completely out in the open. And Sally just gets gunned down instantly.
and not before saying, I think Sally's death is one of the most satisfying deaths, and the fact that it kept happening, chef's kiss. I mean, I'm in the mental health field, and with her being like slaying and calling Jess a schizo freak, and then getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That part though comes out of a lot of this movie I feel like comes out of nowhere. Like we kind of start to realize the patterns, but it still is a little shocking. Like I wasn't ready for like characters to be absolutely gunned down in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. You think like, oh, it's a boat. You know, it might be axed, some glass, stabbed with things. But yeah, you wouldn't think it was a gun, multiple guns, being on the ship was a big surprise.
Yeah. So anyways, there's a massive chase sequence where this mass shooter is going after Jess. They get into a big fight to which Jess ends up winning. And right before Jess would kill this person in the burlap sack head dress, Jess hears the person go, "You have to kill them. It's the only way to get home," before that person's knocked overboard. Mm-hmm. And then, watching this without knowing the trailer or anything like that, I'm like, what's going to happen now? Everyone's dead. And she ends up exploring a little bit of the boat where she hears Anchors Away, which is going to be a song that's going to come back a little bit later in the movie. She hears yelling, to which she goes outside and she sees the boat and the 5 survivors all there again, including herself. And this is the moment we realize we're in a time loop, baby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's
so,
presumed, I think at this point, you guys think like, oh, she just killed herself. Like, oh, she didn't go. The person that brought up sack was her. Did you guys know that at this point?
I'm gonna yes, because in the subtitles of the one that I watched it originally in, it just pops up on the bottom, Jess.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
I didn't get spoiled like that, but I kind of just like assumed. That's what made the most sense.
Yeah, it's a safe assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where I want to ask you guys, because as you said, now like we're in a time loop. Before going into this movie, did you think that this was going to be a movie about, like, that was going to be as sci-fi as it was with dealing with time loops?
No, I thought it was still going to be about a masked killer on the ship. I thought that's what we were going to tie into. There was this, like, these people who took over a ship and have just been doing this. Because I didn't watch the trailer. So I kind of went into it blind.
I did, but not because of, like, guessing or anything, but it's kind of stupid. But in my mind, I don't know why, I think it was something that I watched when I was really young. When I heard there was, like, triangle, I immediately was like, oh, Bermuda Triangle, and then I was like, oh, time loop, because of something that I had watched when I was, like, really young that I have no idea what it was. So I guessed it before actually watching the movie, but, like, not for any particular reason. I just, like, assumed if it's Bermuda Triangle, it probably has a time loop.
Okay. Interesting, yeah.
And the crazy thing is, this twist is not the only twist in this movie.
No, it's not.
It's gonna be a crazy out-of-pocket twist by the end. So, at this point, Jess is like, huh? Seeing all of this happening. And we kind of start to see the events of the original crew coming like onto the boat, talking to each other in the hallway, the same conversations. And then we see Jess drops the keys and she runs away, to which the other group, this new, we're going to call them Loop 2. I think that's going to be easiest. So the Loop 2 group end up going there and see the keys. To which Sally goes, Heather? Again. And this is going to be the case for a lot of the rest of this movie. We're going to start to like kind of see events we saw before, but now through the eyes of someone watching them. And I think something clever that the movie does is the first time they go onto the boat, we see similar shots from like the perspective of someone watching them.
Yes.
But now, like, we think, oh, it's a killer that's watching them, the killer that's on the boat. But now we can see it's actually Jess that's watching them.
Yeah.
So she ends up, her first thing is, I'm going to go warn Victor. And so she is trying to explain to Victor, listen, I don't know what the hell's going on. There's two of me. This is crazy. You're about to be in the Hunger Games. Like, we gotta get off this boat. To which Victor is like, I'm gonna pretend like I didn't hear any of that. And
that's a classic Gale move, I have to say.
Classic Gale.
Yeah, classic Gale. We should have had Pina on the boat. And she is trying her best to explain to Victor, but she ends up impaling his head on the wall hook.
Yeah. Which I thought was pretty clever because, I thought it was clever in like a Final Destination kind of way. Because like I thought it was like, oh, he got shot in the head. And then as soon as she does that, it's like, oh, she's the one that impales his head accidentally. Which, I don't know, I feel like that's hard to do, but maybe that's a soft spot in the head. I don't know. I'm no nurse.
Yeah. So Jess ends up running away, and she finds this room where it has a dozen of, like, her own locket that she wears, and there's notes on the floor that say kill them all, and she ends up, like, taking a paper, writing it out, and comparing it, and it's written exactly the same. So she ends up taking a shotgun and goes to confront this second loop of people trying to change the pattern of it. But there's a third Jess that is running around.
Yeah.
And
murdering them.
Yeah, and she ends up killing Greg and Downey and ends up severely wounding Sally.
Yeah.
Our original Jess is chasing after Sally to be like, that wasn't me. I swear. Baby girl, it's not me. Listen. And at this point, we then see Sally find a radio, and she is the one that is sending the distress call that we heard earlier in the movie on Greg's boat, the Triangle.
Yeah. So, okay. This is where, like, I start to have an issue with the movie. Because I question, like, how does she not realize by now that this has already happened? You're in a room, she loses her locket comes off and it drops into a pile of a bunch of lockets that only she has. She goes to the alert, and then she reads the signal. She sends out the signal, and it turns out it's the same signal that they hear in the beginning of the movie. At that point,
I feel I haven't been talking much this whole time because what I really have to say like pertains to the end of it, and I don't want to like spoil that yet. But part of what I want to say is that we were talking about it being purgatory, but what's her name?
Sally
Heather?
or Jess? Oh, Heather.
But the one that died
Yeah,
at
Heather.
the beginning, that she was like good, so she went to heaven or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, this is not a purgatory for all of them. It's a purgatory only for Jess,
Yeah.
and the other ones can't like grasp what's happening because it's not actually for them or about them, and that it's really all just for Jess for the ending, which I'll talk about once we get to that. But I feel as though it's never about them at all, which is why they can't like really figure it out, and they're just like stupid because it's not really them, you know. It's all about Jess in my mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I could see that. And like of all the characters, no way Sally's gonna know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
I don't even think, does Sally even hear the distress call from the boat? I think it's only Jess and Greg that hear it.
Sally's the one who says the voice call?
Yes, Sally's the one that does the distress call, because then Jess runs to it and sees it and tries to call out in it, but it's not what is said.
Oh, and she tried. Yes, okay. So, sorry, I had it a little confused, but it was still at this point where I started to have the thoughts of like, surely you know that something different is. Okay, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah, and I think Jess understands she's in a loop at this point because she's trying to change it, but she doesn't know how to change it. And I think this is probably one of the best shots of the movie, in my opinion. Jess ends up catching up to Sally on a deck, and the camera does a good job of showing Jess's reaction, and then instantly showing what she's looking at, and it's probably around 100 different Sallys, corpses,
that is
all succumbing to the wound that she had.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's a crazy moment when it's like, oh, this has happened not just once or twice. This has happened over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is
probably a dozen. I'd say like 40.
Yeah.
At least 40 Sallys, and at least in that scenario. That's the other thing too. There are 40 scenarios in which Sally has died that way, and not the other way. Yeah.
And I love how they all have like the same, and it's supposed to be because, you know, she's on a loop. They all have like the same facial expression. They are all holding Jess's sweater that we're gonna see in a few seconds. She ends up giving her sweater to Sally to like put over the wounds, but it is too late. And to which Jess is saying, I'm gonna like get us out of here, like I'm gonna solve this, like you're gonna be okay. Sally's not having it. She is absolutely not having it. She's like, bro, you need to get away from me right now. Like you literally just stabbed the shit out of me.
I will say something that Rachel Carpani, Sally's actress, does well is she doesn't see the other bodies around her. Which is something that I thought was interesting, because I was like, are they going to acknowledge how many bodies there are? But they don't. And that's what makes me think the same thing as Savannah, that this is purgatory for Jess, not for anybody else.
To me, like specifically, I really like that scene because her like putting over and over again, putting like the jacket on her body and stuff feels like so like nurturing and caring. And it's almost like the amount of bodies represents like the amount of guilt she has over stuff that we see at the end. You know, how many times she's probably done that and lashed out and then has to like take care of that and nurture. You know what I'm like? I don't want to get to that part yet, but that's kind of what it represents to me, is like how many Sallys there are, is like how much has happened, how like upset she's over about it, but she can't change what she's done, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right, I mean, we have a Sally that does decide to viciously kill all of them.
A Sally?
A Jess. We have a version of a Jess who decides to viciously kill someone, who kills all of them.
Yeah.
Or at least tries to.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, we see that the second Jess from the second loop kills the third Jess. That was the one that was killing
Yes.
the group
Yep.
within this second loop that we were seeing. At this point, then the boat returns again with all of them, and this is where Jess realizes that the loop restarts once everyone is killed.
Yeah.
So, trying to stop the loop, Jess tries to set the first loop into like gear into as to what happens by writing on the mirror, go to the theater. She dumps bodies overboard, which is something she saw that we kind of didn't mention. And there are parts of this movie we're not mentioning that on a watch, like it is cool to kind of see
It's
how.
confusing. It's a really confusing movie to just kind of explain verbally over and over because it's
Yeah.
the same things are happening, but they're just adding another layer to it, and then slightly different things will happen. It's kind of like the Marvel timeline when they start messing with times, and they're all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I won't go into the details of it, but basically what we said before, like originally happens. Same thing. She ends up arming herself. We see her conversation with Greg where he realizes that's Jess before she shoots him, which then makes sense as to why Sally is like, you shot him. He said you shot him. And the bomb, this new Jess is like, huh? With everything. And we get to the same part where she's about to be knocked overboard, and she says the same thing. You have to kill him. It's the only way to get home. At this point, we have about like 15 minutes left of the movie, 20 minutes left. So I'm like, all right, what's gonna happen? Is she chill now? She ends up waking up. She's on the shore, on a beach, and she realizes that it's the same morning. She runs home and watches from the outside of the house where she sees her earlier self in moments that we also see in the beginning, but it cuts out a lot of the dialogue and just shows like little like flashes of the scenes that are happening.
I think it's important thing to just visualize. Anyone who isn't understanding, listening right now is you think at this last time that you see her on the boat, on the ship, is you're like, okay, this is the time that she's done everything. She's done something different. But then she goes off into the water, and you realize that's exactly what's happened. The first Jess that we see, the first Jess timeline, we're just now seeing the other end of it.
Yeah.
And now, not only are we at the first timeline again, we're at the very beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
From a different perspective.
And it's interesting because we see those same events happening from the beginning of the movie, not really knowing what is going on. But this is where this third twist ends up happening. We see that Jess is abusive to her autistic son. To where she yells at him, and there's a moment where Tommy looks outside and sees Jess and kind of panics and hits the paint down that he's painting with on the floor, to which the Jess inside of the house sees, and she hits him.
Yeah.
So...
And you're like, oh, Jess is terrible.
Yeah.
Which, okay... Upon reviewing Reddit for theories and other things, and after watching this, Jordan, who was intrigued by one of Sally's lines in the beginning, she heard Sally say, "What am I supposed to say? Sorry, your son's." And they don't say mentally ill, but you can imagine the slang they use. And Jordan's response was, is the horror of this movie going to be these people's ignorance? But then so that's what got her attention. And then she found someone talk about this scene, suggesting that so they were like, "Dang, so they said, if slapping your kid makes you end up in purgatory, what can you do to get into heaven?" as suggesting slapping your kid is everyone slaps their kids, so maybe no one's in heaven.
Hmm.
Crazy. Anyway, just want to put that all in there.
This is where, for me, like, the movie kind of comes together. It's weird that it's at, like, this moment itself that we just, like, kind of see at the beginning of the movie as the events happening. Mm-hmm. Because it all starts to make sense why she is experiencing it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're seeing Jess's true colors.
Mm-hmm. And it's something because, like you say, said Savannah, which I think was great with, like, Sally and how she seems very nurturing. In the beginning of the movie, we only see, like, these moments where it seems like she's nurturing Tommy. Where, like, we see her holding Tommy, where she says things are going to be different. Like, I promise, I swear.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where we see this moment where our Jess we've been following throughout the whole movie rings the doorbell, goes to the back, gets a weapon, goes inside the house, and messes up this Jess. Like,
kills this Jess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Violently. And it's a lot of it is off camera, but we see that initial blow and then just the swinging and the grunts.
Yeah. And then we see her son.
Yeah, watching in horror.
Mm-hmm.
To which she starts hugging Tommy and says, I promise things are going to be different. Just like the beginning. And we see she ends up packing up the car with the dead body. And she's like, we are going to get the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. And she starts driving off. Now, where it kind of differs is, in the beginning of the movie, we know that she's going to be going on a boat. So when she's driving, we're like, oh, they're headed to the boat. But now we see the same shot with the context. She is not driving to the boat. She is trying to get out of here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think this is cool because for the audience, if we pick up on that and watch that, we as the audience still realize that she's in the loop.
Yes.
But Jess, the character, does not realize that she is still in the loop.
It's funny. It's really poignant. They use the Florida sign, and it says, come back soon.
Mm-hmm.
On it. It's like, oh, that's right on the nose.
Mm-hmm. And we're also going to have a moment where a seagull hits their windshield, and Tommy starts freaking out, which makes sense. I would be freaking out if a seagull just randomly hit my windshield.
That's pretty freaky.
And she's like, I'm going to, like, dispose of it. Don't worry. I'm going to get rid of it. And during this time, we hear a band in the background, a marching band playing Anchors Away, which we heard on the ship. Mm-hmm. And she ends up throwing the seagull and looks down and sees a pile of dead seagulls.
She's been here before. She's done
this
over and over again.
And she realizes, oh my god, I am still in this loop. And so she's like, we, like, need to get away. So she's driving. Tommy is crying, panicking in the back because of the blood, which makes sense. He literally just saw a whole bunch of blood from his mom, the Jess that was in the house, before getting killed by the other Jess that we've been following. And because of this, Jess ends up getting distracted, and she gets into a car crash with the truck. Which I also want to mention, like, great stunt work for that. Like, this is very well done crash.
Yeah, they don't do that, the typical, the typical car explosion that you usually see on stunt, but it's like the, yeah, whatever, I forget what it's, you know, it's like the tip, like one from the back side of the car, something blows up, and then it goes like this, and then it spins. It's like a very specific way. It is pretty good graphics.
Yeah,
pretty
and
design.
at this point, we see that Tommy is dead, and we see that the double from the trunk of the car, that the dead Jess, is also dead.
Yeah.
and we see
Brutal.
our Jess from the beginning watching this. And what I love is at this moment, the color grade of the movie shifts,
Changes. Yeah.
and it becomes very gray, and we
What do
see
you-
a taxi driver.
Do you guys
Who-
take this as... Sorry, I cut you off, Brian.
Oh no, I was just gonna finish saying who asked
Okay.
Jess if she wants to go to the harbor.
Yeah. I think it's important to say he introduces himself. No, I'm just the driver, or just a driver, which is like I feel like I got it right away. Like, oh, he's this is Sisyphus, and this is the deal with the devil, and this is purgatory. Then he's just the driver between the driver between punishments, which has a name. Turns out his name's Chiron,
Mm-hmm.
the Greek driver.
The Greek taxi driver.
Greek god. Apparently, apparently it's Uber in Greek mythology, and Chiron's Uber.
Yeah. And I want to mention from before, like how I said, like I don't agree with it's the purgatory for everyone. I do think that it is a purgatory for just Jess.
Okay.
I do align with that, and it is because of this taxi driver moment. He ends up driving her to the harbor, and he ends up saying something along the lines like, do you promise you'll be back to pay?
Yeah. And
And-
she goes, yes. Absolutely I will, or something. I promise I will.
She says, yes, I promise.
And it's crazy, because she spends this whole time trying to figure out what to do different. And the one thing that she thing that she doesn't do differently is she doesn't she lied. She continues to lie to the taxi, suggesting that that's the way to break the it's a potential thing to break the spell, and she doesn't do it. And there's a reason.
Yeah, and something that I read was that there's a line early in the movie when Jess wakes up on a nap from the boat about dreams and like what they could do. So she also falls asleep in the taxi, and there's the suggestion that when Jess falls asleep, she forgets the events that has already happened. Leading to the deja vu on the boat later. So I forget the exact line of the movie, but it's right at the beginning with
They talk about her memory.
yes. So it is something that is mentioned, and at this point we see her joining Gray on like the boat, starting the loop again, and with the same goal of trying to bring back her son. And that is the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, Savannah, I know that you had something that you wanted to talk about with
Yeah.
the ending.
I feel like just like looking back on the beginning of the movie with knowing about her abusing her son and all, I feel like it can only point to the one possibility, obviously with the taxi driver, that it's her own purgatory and all, and with them not picking up on the clues. And I think it's interesting with like the smaller metaphors, because there's like a lot of small hinting detail, like you were saying, with like the bodies getting thrown over and like all that little stuff. But I feel like another big one is kind of like her hiding from herself in the boat, and like the disguise that she puts on and not showing herself to the other people. And I feel like the other characters are in her purgatory not for like the deaths and like getting to her. I feel like it's kind of a metaphor for how like afraid she is of being found out that she's an abuser, and how it all, like, most of the deaths start with her, whether it was accidental or not, like how the guy hits his head on the wall. But I feel like when she puts on the mask and stuff, like, she's so afraid of them finding out that it's her because of everything that's happened with her son and the past abuse, and that they're just serving to find out what she's really like, because no matter how hard she tries, it's at the end of the day, it's just a cycle of her trying to change herself, which is something that she's never going to be able to do because of what her life was like. You know, like, it's the cycle of the abuse, really, not like the deaths. It's all about the son and her trying to change herself at the end,
So,
which
I mean,
obviously can't happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, what my question here that I try and wrap my head around is what the true timeline is. She dies in a car accident.
Hmm.
But does she die in a car accident on the way to the sailing trip?
That's kind of how I took it. Is that's where, like, the real death happened.
But was she heading towards the sailing? The problem with, to me, the problem with that is that she wasn't heading towards the docks. So what, like, the scenario of her leaving was motivated by the events of the purgatory punishment.
To me, I mean, like, I can't say for sure, but to me, I kind of took it as originally she was leaving to do something, and in my mind, like, the doc, the people or whatever, like, they were never real. That was never something that she was going for. That's kind of how her purgatory, like, manifested itself in my mind. Like, that was the purgatory. She was never actually going there until the death. You know what I mean?
I see. That was even fabricated itself.
Yes, that's how I figured it, because it wouldn't make sense for her to have been, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's something that it leaves up in the air so that we could have our own guesses of what we think happened.
Yeah.
Because I think there was an interview with Christopher Smith where he said, like, they did plan out, like, how, like, the whole timeline worked and how the loop occurred and everything, but it's something that they just don't tell. They don't ever show.
I love that movie for this. I'm a big fan of, like, open-ended, like, horror movie style where it's never revealed, like, why this is happening, or, like, where it's not totally giving you the details for it. I love that. There's so many interpretations to, like, what the purgatory is and why it's happening, and to me, it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and that's something even I said, how, like, there was the read that it's all of their purgatories, and that Heather was swept away because she was good, and there are different reads to this movie. There of course there's the one in quote right read, which is the one that the director wrote and what they were going for. But for us watching this movie, there are so many different things that we can interpret, but we're given these little clues to be able to have these different notions of what we think happened. You know, just like the movie like Mungo. How there's the read that the brother was the one that killed the main character, and how there's little hints if you were to follow that, why that would make sense. We have, so I agree with you, Savannah. I love when a movie does that, and I think it's also because a lot of bad horror movies have these, like, we always say, the obligatory Google research scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, half the time they don't have the copyright to it, so, like, they're on Woogle or, like, something like that, to spend 5 minutes to just have so much lore and everything just dropped on the character.
I feel like I wish they did it in a different way. You know? I wish it was more than just this given time for a few minutes, because it wasn't resource gathering. Right. I guess that's the research, that's the research phase. But yeah, I wish they'd given it some other way. I like that. I like the Sisyphus parallelism. I like that story for this. Yeah, I just wish it was presented in a different way.
If you want this story in a different font, in the tall grass.
What?
I hate that movie.
Oh,
I was gonna say I don't like In the Tall Grass.
Oh, okay.
Similar kind of scenarios dealing with like time loops and stuff like that.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Nightmare double feature. I will say that is a nightmare double feature to do Triangle and In the Tall Grass.
Okay, that would get you really existential.
Yes, but I really enjoy this movie. I think this is one of the most underrated 2000s horror films in a decade that was filled with really bad American remakes of international movies.
Mm-hmm.
To like trying to retread old territory with like I think the lack of originality is what kills me with the 2000s. That where like movies like Trick or Treat, The Orphanage, Triangle really speak out to me because they're so vividly distinct compared to like the color grades of like these remakes. Like there's just such a specific color grade to those movies.
Mm-hmm. You're talking just like there's like filters. You're saying, right? You're saying
Yeah,
the
kind of like how like I almost said Triangle again. How Twilight has like the filter on it, which is just so 2000s, and we always say, "Oh, that's such a 2000s thing."
Hey now. Don't start
Listen.
bashing Twilight in front of me.
Listen, I'm not gonna bash Twilight. I promise. The baseball scene's important. I swear. But we do this at the end of our movies. 1 sentence review for Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you said before that you had something, Nick, that you were gonna.
Yeah, and I have it pulled up. I will say I'm glad we talked about this. I know this sometimes happens to Bill, and today I'm feeling it. Talking about it has made me appreciate it more. I think I'll bump up my Letterboxd review to a 3 stars.
Still too low, but I'll take it.
So I guess I think I can add to mine. Similar to being in school, I feel like the movie was trying hard to teach me a lesson that I had already that I already knew. But that didn't stop me from having a really good time in class and also watching.
Nice. Savannah, do you have your 1 sentence review?
I think that Triangle at the end of the day is just a metaphor for the cycle of abuse in motherhood, and how if somebody doesn't like stop the chain of it, it's never gonna end. Just my take on it.
Nice. Mine's gonna be, I'm glad the movie is called Triangle and not Quadrilateral because there's only 3 loops we see in this movie and there are 3 sides to a triangle.
That's a great point.
Yes. Very nice, Ryan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Do you know
Which
they're
one
also...
do you think is like the top of the triangle? The abuse, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
100%. I didn't say this when we were at that part like of the plot, but when my kids were watching the movie and like, you know, Jess comes back and is like, "Did you do this?" And you know, Like, you could hear a pin drop in the room as soon as she did that. And, like, all of my kids, like, jaws, like, just going.
Mine too, when I watched it.
Because it's such an insane twist that, like, you could say doesn't feel necessary, but like, that is the movie. Like, that is literally
That's Jess.
Yeah, that is our character that we're following, who we think is our hero. You know, she's not a good person.
No.
Another reason why I love this movie. You know, I don't want to follow good characters all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to follow someone that is... This isn't a morally gray. Like, this is definitely, like, we're going toward just terrible person. But
they
you know
did
what I mean.
Such a good job, because I feel like not seeing it for the majority of the movie is like a good metaphor for like abuse just being hidden, you know?
Yeah.
Like not always being able to tell when it's happening because it doesn't happen all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, you don't get movies that they reveal the true characteristic of a character at the end. It really throws you for a loop. And but it's also like it's so immediate. Like, oh, wow, I'm super surprised, but I don't feel any remorse. I don't feel any remorse towards her, and I can see exactly why she deserved to be in this purgatory, why she's here.
Yeah. With all of that being said, thank you everyone for listening to this episode. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Savannah, for being here, for jumping in for Bill. Very soon, we will be having Skippy back. He has finished his project, and he is very excited to be coming back, being here, offering some advice as like the voice of God, you know, that will just randomly drop upon us as we're talking.
Yeah. All hail Skippy.
And with all that being said, remember, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Three Strangers podcast. I am your host, Ryan.
I'm Nick.
I'm Savannah.
And Savannah has replaced Bill for this episode of the podcast.
Yay!
Wow.
Bye everyone.
See ya.